In life, it's very easy to have a goal, such as becoming an expat or even vacationing in the Philippines. It's easy to have a goal, and then due to lack of really focusing on that goal, the days go by and either nothing happens because no attention is being put towards reaching that goal, or a person basically makes a half-ass attempt at the goal and really doesn't feel all that satisfied with the outcome. So what I want to just talk about briefly here today are 3 areas of your life that it would do you well to just sit down with a cup of coffee and think about these 3 areas of your life. Where do they stand right now? And in what way do you need to make changes? Because these 3 areas that we're going to talk about are the top 3 reasons why guys either never make it to living abroad outside their own country. And it's not just the Philippines. They may have plans to live in Thailand or Cambodia or Vietnam or wherever, maybe even roam around in Southeast Asia. Guys that I've seen over the last 12, 13 years as I've lived here in the Philippines, who either have an unfulfilling experience or they just flat out crash and burn. It's because out of all the ducks they needed to get in a row, they dropped the ball on one of these 3 things. Now, the first one is money. As I've said before, it doesn't matter whether you're thinking about starting a business or getting married or having kids, all of which could happen in the Philippines, but even in your own country, if you're going to take on an endeavor, 9 times out of 10, it's going to require money. So if you plan on living in another country, the first thing you really have to have lined up solid is money, because it's very rare that you can move to another country and then just say to yourself, well, I'll get settled into my apartment and then I'll open the classified ads. I'll get me a job there. I'm surprised how many guys I have spoken with who actually think they can do this. They haven't done their research. Now, I particularly focus on the Philippines, but much of what I'm going to say now applies to other countries as well. Number 1, as a foreigner, you're going to need a work visa, which means you're going to need to set up a job ahead of time, and that company needs to sponsor you for this work visa. Now, that sounds simple enough, and it can be done if maybe you're talking about Dubai or Singapore, where the economy is strong. But if you're talking about Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, your odds of getting a job that's going to pay a living wage, that's very important, are almost 0. You're going to have some kind of specialized skill that can't be found in that country. Now, maybe you do something very specialized like forensic accounting, or you're an attorney, or you're a doctor, and your services are needed in other countries, and all the more so the fact that you speak good English. However, keep in mind that in the Philippines, there is no shortage of labor. There are plenty of guys for every job who are unemployed or underemployed. And the ones who are employed are making anywhere from $300 to $600 a month. Now, if you think that you're going to come to the Philippines and work in a call center and maybe earn $700 a month at best, and somehow live out in a nipa hut and show up for work every day and live on that, forget about it. So in short, money. You need to have an income. This is why the 2 largest groups of expats that I see, either long-term or even short-term, who stay here for 2-3 months at a time, the vast majority of them are retirement age. They either have their American Social Security after age 62, or they have a pension that they claimed earlier in life after, say, 25 years in the military or 20 years with a company that still offers a pension, but they have income that doesn't require them to work a job. That's the vast majority of guys that I know. Now, there's a growing minority of guys, and for right now, let's just say it's somewhere in the 15 to 20% of guys who are under age 45 that are adept enough with some kind of a skill that they can earn money online. I did another video talking about websites that offer remote jobs. You're actually working for a company and they don't mind that you work remotely. All the work is done online. They really don't care what country you're in as long as the job gets done. And of course, that requires having some pretty good, reliable internet service. Now, some guys say to themselves, well, I'll go on a place like Fiverr where you're not working for a company. You're basically doing individual short-time gigs is what they call them. And you're getting paid anywhere from $10 to maybe $30 or even $80. But you got to hustle up your work every single day. And you could have dry spells. And you're usually going to be going up against some really high competition. No matter what you're thinking of doing, you go on Fiverr. Before you start planning on this being your business, go on Fiverr or any of these similar platforms and type in a search for who's already doing that service. I guarantee you, you're going to see hundreds, if not thousands of guys online, many of them in India, who are not only doing the same job you're doing, they have a longer reputation of doing it online, and they will do it for less money than you're willing to accept. So I really don't recommend trying to earn money piecemeal, one little gig at a time. That's way too dangerous a thing to do when you're living in a foreign land. You've got to pay the rent. You need to get your visa extensions paid. You got to eat. So you don't want unreliable income like that. Now, same thing with teaching English online. 7 years ago, that was a pretty good gig. But ever since China did a big pullback on that, the market for teaching English has dropped drastically to the point where they won't even look at your application unless you've got a degree. And then they want to see a couple of years experience as an English teacher. And when you get past that, maybe you're looking at $15, $16 an hour. So before you think to yourself, well, I'm just going to move into the Philippines and I'll hustle up a website and teach some English, whatever it is you do online, start doing it in your country. Start earning before you even leave for the Philippines. Because if you can't do it from your country, if you can't earn at least at the very minimum 1,200, I recommend 1,500 for a single guy who's not going to be married or supporting any kids. For your base expenses and a little bit of luxury, 1,500 a month is what you should be able to earn in US dollars from your home country before you come here. Do not move here and think, well, I'm going to have all this free time and I'm going to focus on making money. No, you could go months without making a dime, and then things just go from bad to worse. So the first point, money. You've got to have your income lined up. And again, do the math. Do not come here without income and say to yourself, well, I got $30,000 in the bank. Life is a lot less expensive in the Philippines. That'll last me maybe forever. No, it won't. Take that 30,000, that 50,000, whatever it is you got in savings, divide it by 1,500, and that'll tell you how many months you've got until you run out of money. So do not do that. I've seen too many guys do that, and then they end up homeless, sleeping on the beach. They get robbed. Now they don't even have their passport or ID. You don't want to end up like that. The next item is your health. Now, I have met over the years, I remember one guy in Dumaguete, really nice guy, and he's still living in the Philippines. And it's been about, like I said, about 7-8 years since I've met him. And he is, for all intents and purposes, paraplegic. And he gets around, many of you may know him, in a custom sort of go-kart wheelchair. He can't communicate so much verbally. He's got a little computer thing. I give the guy credit. He's out on a limb without a safety net in the Philippines, tooling around. He can't walk. He can barely use one arm and speaks with a little computer thing. Me personally, I would not do that. I would not put myself out there like that. I've met other expats who are wheelchair bound. And the problem is, unless you're living in a nice area like, say, downtown Cebu, the IT park area, Makati, BGC, Quezon, unless you're in a really nice area where they have real sidewalks, being in a wheelchair sucks in most islands and cities in the Philippines. You might have 20 feet of sidewalk and then it just drops 8 inches and then it's maybe broken sidewalk and then some asphalt and then some gravel and then maybe another 10 feet of sidewalk on the other block. It's not the place to be. And the last thing you want to be doing is tooling along on the shoulder side of the road with your back to traffic, just hoping and praying that all these drivers behind you in the Philippines noticed you're on the road in a wheelchair. Because the one that doesn't, the one that's texting on his phone or doing whatever, well, you can imagine how badly that's going to go. So do an assessment of your health. Now, I have seen in the Philippines, it's rare, but I have seen dialysis centers. So they do exist here. If you need dialysis, it does exist here. So when you're doing your research, you obviously want to pick a city that has a dialysis center that you can go to on a regular basis. I've had so many guys contact me and they say, oh, well, I'm on such and such medication. Can I get it there in the Philippines? An easy way to find out, and maybe I'll put a link there in the description if you remind me, is you can go to the online website for Watson's Pharmacy or Rose Pharmacy. Those are two of the largest pharmacies here in the Philippines. They're just about on every single island. And you can go online and do a search and see most medications they do carry, especially for diabetes and hypertension. Those are here. And often they're less expensive than what you're paying in a copay back home. So if there's medications you need, check online. Usually it's going to be here. Now, the one difficulty some guys have had are medications that involve any kind of like opiate or addicting substance, anything that causes drowsiness like Ambien, anything like that. That's where most guys have a problem getting hold of those medications. You're going to probably need to get, once you're here in the Philippines, a personal physician who will write you a prescription for what you need, and then you can go to the pharmacy and expect there's going to be questions. They're going to want to look at your ID. They're very strict on illegal drugs, and anything that could be abused, whether it be a barbiturate, again, anything that induces drowsiness, they are going to look it over and really, dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure you're not abusing this drug. So just kind of expect that. Now, you might be in pretty good condition, depending on your definition, but the reality of life is that even if you're in really good condition, you're walking every day, you're eating good, you're not consuming any alcohol, you're not a smoker, even if you're doing all the right things, old man time is going to catch up with you. And at some point, God willing, you get to reach 75, 80, 85, 90 years old, and you're living in the Philippines. That is not the time to look around, and there's not a good hospital to be found 3, 5, 10 hours away. You're out in the middle of nowhere where it's beautiful, pristine beaches and wonderful sunsets and a quaint little town, but no hospital. So one of my requirements before I even think about getting property here, again, as a foreigner, you can't own it. You can pay for it, but it's going to have to go in the name of a Philippine citizen. That's a whole other discussion. But before you plop down a bunch of money on where you're going to permanently live, and by the way, yes, I know, you can own a condo. because when you buy a condo, you're not purchasing the land. But even still, think ahead of time. Where's the nearest acceptable hospital that you would feel comfortable getting care at? Because yes, you go to a tiny little island and they're going to have a hospital, but take some time to go walk through it. You may realize within 5-10 minutes, there's no way you feel comfortable getting medical care there, especially if it's going to have something to do with your heart or whatever. And they may not even have, say, a coronary angioplasty lab in the hospital. The nearest one might be 2 islands away. So take a honest self-assessment of your health and ask yourself, okay, how soon am I going to really need to have a good hospital nearby? Now, if you're in really good health and all goes great, maybe you can spend the next 10, 15 years just hopping around like a grasshopper and go to this tiny little island and that one. But when it comes time to settle down, you're going to really want to take an assessment of your health and consider, I should really live somewhere within at least 30 to 60 minutes of a good hospital. The final third thing to take into consideration before you make the commitment to live as an expat overseas are what I call your social obligations. Now, maybe obligation is too big a word, but that's the word that's going to be thrown at you by some people in your family. Now, you may be divorced, never married, widowed, but if you have kids from the earlier part of your life, if you're going to live full time in another country, you obviously can't be in 2 places at the same time, which means you're just really not going to have that daily interaction and relationship with your adult children or even your grandchildren. And if your children are still minors below the age of 18, my recommendation has always been the Philippines will always be here. Don't become an expat until you've at least built a good relationship with your minor children till they're 18 at the very minimum. Stay until they're at least going off to college or working full time, doing something productive with their life, because at that point, you're lucky if you'll even see them 1 or 2 weekends a month. They're going to be busy exploring all their newfound freedom and friends and work and obligations of their own. But when they are minors, they need to know who their dad is by spending time with him, by you taking them out to a picnic or for a walk or having lunch together and spending the night and all that, building that relationship as a parent with a child. That is my strong, strong recommendation. If you have minor children, attend to them first before you launch off on a plane, and maybe once a year you come back for a week or 2, but there is that relationship cost. It's unavoidable. And you can tell yourself, well, my minor kids, they've got Facebook and we can just chat online. To me, that is just below the minimum. You're communicating, but you're not really sharing any real life experiences. You're not holding their hand and buying them ice cream and taking a walk at the park and feeding the ducks together, or, just all those parent-child experiences in real life. Now, people are free to do what they're going to do. I know I've talked to some guys who said they got a divorce. They would love to be spending time with their minor children. And as happens too many times, the ex has alienated the kids away from their father with lies, which to me is just the most evil, unforgivable thing a person could do. To separate a child's love from their father by telling that child lies. Oh, your dad doesn't care about you. Your dad never gives us money. Your dad doesn't even want to be with you. And, just all the lies. And then these kids, they get older and go through time thinking this is true. And so I've had guys tell me, well, I would love to spend time with my kids, but they don't even want to show up. When I come to pick them up, they don't want to go. They always find excuses because their mom told them this and their mom told them that. So I can understand some guys are like, I don't even get to see my kids anyway. So again, I'm not here to be dogmatic. I'm just telling you the better choice is if you can be spending time with your kids, build, or if you think you can repair that relationship with your kids, make that your priority. You do what you want. Just know that if you could have spent time with your kids, but you just didn't have the patience or self-control, you just wanted to get to the Philippines and live the dream, there will be a cost to pay if you could have spent time with your kids and you chose not to. So those are the three things. Again, to recap, you want to know that you have some sort of income, retirement income of some form. Maybe you have investments that pay dividends on a monthly basis, or your portfolio is doing well enough that you can skim off enough a year to live comfortably. Maybe you can work online, do a remote job. I have friends of mine that do this. Sometimes they have to work during the night shift in the Philippines to service the customers online who are on the day hours back in the West, in the United States, Canada, etc. That can have an effect on your social life, which again is a whole other conversation. The next thing is your health. Do an assessment, and not just where you're at with your health today, but it would behoove you to think, well, okay, I could use losing a little bit of weight. I could do a little bit more stretching, calisthenics, walking every day. I could use a revamp of my diet. There's plenty of YouTubes about the keto diet, carnivore diet, intermittent fasting. I highly recommend you self-educate yourself from multiple sources, because whether you go on keto, carnivore, or even intermittent fasting, you'll be doing your health a huge favor. Reassess. Do you really need to keep smoking? Do you really need alcohol every other day? Because that's not doing your body any favors. So, some things to think about. Feel free to share your situation and what you're facing and how you resolved it there in the comments, and we can all kind of learn from each other.